The General Hospital recap for Friday, September 12th, shows Sonny Corinthos and BRIBE framing Drew Cain for the judge bribe, while Jason Morgan punished Anna Devane for her treason. Emma Scorpio Drake met with Giovanni Giopalmieri in the cafe to discuss her strategy. Emma knew Professor Henry Hank Dalton's schedule, so when he arrived, she surprised him with a slice of his favorite cheesecake. Professor Dalton eventually received a phone call about a box on its way, so Emma assumed it involved animal studies and was confident she'd soon have him where she wanted. Gio, on the other hand, had bad news for Emma after learning of her abduction in the outback. Liesl Albrecht awoke at Gitch after taking smelling salts and discovered Britt Westbourne was there in person. Albrecht embraced Britt and admitted she had many concerns about how this was possible. Britt promised to answer them later and received a hug from Nina Reeves. Britt found out that Ben aka Rocco Falconeri was in the hospital and wanted to see him, so she was upset when Dante Falconeri and Lulu Spencer stepped in the way. Lulu and Dante wanted to speak with Rocco first, so Britt returned to Nina's place. Liesl pressured Britt for answers immediately quickly, so she disclosed that she had been approached about a research position just before Heather Weber's attack on the pier. The attack was real, but Britt was lying about her death because she didn't want Liesl to see her degrade as a result of her disease. Albrecht was enraged because Britt had misled her into believing that her own daughter had died in her arms. Liesl ended up slapping Britt in the face in a fit of rage. Back at General Hospital, Lucas Jones patched up Rocco before Elizabeth Baldwin devised a new protocol. Rocco was delayed long enough to clear the coast for Britt. Rocco returned home with Dante and Lulu, so they sat him down with Charlotte Cassadine and informed him that Britt had arrived at the hospital tonight. Rocco was upset that he had been kept away from Britt, but Lulu and Dante preferred to take their time with things. In Anna's office, Jason insisted on speaking with her privately. After Carly Spencer departed, Jason questioned Anna about Jocelyn Jacks. Anna apologized for hiding Jocelyn's WSB status from Jason, but she pointed out that Jack Brennan had put her in a terrible situation. Spilling would have resulted in treason accusations. Anna directed Jason toward Jocelyn, but he felt manipulated. Anna pondered what Jason would do now that he knew everything. Jason was not going to tell Carly because he had promised Jocelyn not to, but he was still angry at Anna's betrayal. When Anna demanded more details about what transpired in Croatia, Jason urged her to ask Brennan and stomped out. In Australia, Jocelyn and S. Vaughn returned from surfing at Bondi Beach, and they went to bed together. There was some disagreement about how strong their link was after nearly dying, but Vaughn said Brennan couldn't tell. Brennan pushed through the door, shocking both agents and forcing Vaughn and Jocelyn to pull their weapons on him. When Jocelyn and Vaughn realized it was Brennan, they lowered their sheets only to discover they had been busted beneath them. Brennan gave Mr. and Mrs. Nash a minute to prepare before grilling them on the objective at the Five Poppies Resort. Jocelyn and Vaughn detailed Britt's predicament before delving into their failed cover, which Brennan stated was due to Colette Moreau. Brennan inquired as to how Vaughn and Jocelyn were still alive, to which Joss answered that Jason had rescued them. That surprise sent Brennan reeling and raised even more anxieties, so Jocelyn thought Jason's presence at the resort was related to Britt. Brennan was unhappy with Jocelyn and Vaughn for deviating so far from their primary recon objective. Back in Port Charles, Britt met with Sonny in his office and confirmed that when Judge Eva Heron's account was inspected, Drew looked to be behind the $1 million move. Carly arrived to report Jason's return and recalled seeing him in Anna's office, prompting her to explain why she was there. Carly told Sonny and Britt about her threat to kill Drew, which she needed to plan for. There was some dispute over Michael Corinthos, so Britt wondered if Carly was attempting to shift attention away from him. Carly didn't believe Michael was guilty, but she was worried Drew would take him down anyhow. Over with Elizabeth again, she stunned Lucas by revealing Britt was alive. Once Lucas was satisfied, he intended to contact Brad Cooper and inform him. Liz stopped Lucas, informing him that Brad could have been involved in Britt's fabricated death. According to General Hospital spoilers, Brad and Lucas may cross paths again soon, so expect some awkwardness. Make CDL your primary source for excellent General Hospital spoilers, updates, and news. General Hospital teasers for Monday, September 15, 2025 suggest some surprises. For starters, Britt Westbourne and Liesl Albrecht have a falling out. Anna Devane has new proof. Drew Kane has also effectively manipulated Martin Gray. Continue reading to find out what happens in the upcoming episode of ABC's soap opera. Britt Westbourne's outburst. Let's begin with Britt, who has recently returned to Port Charles. Surprise! She's alive. While she did share a poignant embrace with Liesl, things swiftly went downhill. Britt bursts out while alone with Albrecht and Nina Reeves. The brunette says, "I am the monster you raised me to be." It appears she is keeping a great secret and trying to protect everyone. The issue is, what is this secret and why did they want everyone to believe Britt was dead? Martin Gray manipulated Drew is awake in the hospital after being shot and undergoing surgery. However, the man is as vicious as ever. The congressman has promised to imprison Michael Corinthos. Drew will now have power over Martin. Martin appeared to have finally recognized Drew's true colors and was walking away. However, during a hospital visit, Drew cautions Martin that he must make certain that the police never see that evidence. Anna Devane's evidence. General Hospital spoilers for Monday, September 15th indicate that Anna obtains additional evidence. Is this the evidence Drew wants Martin to dispose of? In addition, a preview clip from the next episode shows Anna telling Harrison Chase of some critical information. The commissioner asserts that Drew is now Justine Turner's responsibility. In addition, Jason Morgan plans to give Carly Spencer and Sonny Corinthos a visit. The right-hand man will allege that someone went to considerable efforts to stage Britt's death. Will Jason inform Carly that Jocelyn is a WSB agent? Carly once made him promise not to keep any more secrets from her, especially ones affecting the children. Fans might expect Marco Rios to confront Jen Sidwell. Furthermore, Jack Brennan is unhappy with his agents. The WSB head informs Vaughn and Jocelyn Jacks that their little prank will cost them. Which tale are you most excited to see in the week of September 15, 2025? The city of Port Charles was bustling with its usual undercurrent of secrets, power intrigues, and complicated relationships, but the most recent scandal to hit its elite circles was unlike anything the region had seen in years. Sonny Corinthos and Brick were at the core of everything, two people whose names were familiar in both respectable and sleazy corners of the city. Their most recent ruse, a calculated scheme to accuse Drew Kane of bribery, shook the neighborhood, exposing loyalties, destroying trust, and sparking a cascade of accusations. Jason Morgan, Sonny's close friend and enforcer, finds himself caught in the crossfire, grappling with the pain of betrayal by Anna Devane, a lady whose moral compass he had previously admired. The fallout was vicious, cruel, and very personal, entwining everyone in a web of deception that threatened to topple Port Charles's fragile balance of power. Sonny Corinthos sat in his dimly lit office at the back of Pozzolo's, an Italian restaurant that also served as a front for his less savory enterprises. The aroma of espresso remained in the air, yet the ambience was everything from cozy. His dark eyes, piercing and calculating, glanced over Brick, who sat calmly against the wall, scrolling through his phone with the ease of a man who understood he was untouchable. Brick's reputation as a technologically proficient fixer made him an excellent collaborator on this project. They had collaborated to create a scheme so sophisticated that it was nearly flawless. Drew Kane, the Quartermain family's golden kid, was their target, a man with a clean record and political ambitions who challenged Sonny's control over certain judicial decisions. Harold Grayson, the judge in question, was no saint, having been known to take bribes when the occasion offered. But pinning it on Drew? Sonny thought that was a stroke of genius. The plan was simple but brilliant. Brick, with his digital manipulation skills, had left a trail of evidence, including bank transfers, encrypted emails, and even a grainy security camera film that appeared to show Drew meeting with Grayson in a dimly lit parking garage. The money trail ran straight to an offshore account in Drew's name through Brick, who employed a shell company that appeared to be legitimate enough to pass investigation. Sonny had ensured that the appropriate people were aware of the evidence. A few murmurs to the press, a tip to the authorities, and Drew was suddenly under investigation, his reputation tumbling faster than a house of cards in a windstorm. The beauty of it was that nobody suspected Sonny or Brick. They were overly careful, experienced, and removed from the paper trail. Drew got taken off surprise. He had spent years rebuilding his life after prison, portraying himself as a successful businessman and potential candidate for public office. The Quartermains, his complicated family, had reluctantly supported his campaign, viewing it as a chance to restore their supremacy in Port Charles. But now, with headlines screaming about corruption and bribery, Drew's goals were slipping away. He sat in his ULTIMATUM office, staring at the news ticker on his laptop, his jaw clenched with rage. His phone was continuously buzzing with reporters, lawyers, and family members, but he ignored them all. His mind was racing, trying to figure out what had happened. He had not bribed anybody. He barely knew Judge Grayson beyond a handshake at a charity event. However, the evidence was damning and the public ate it up. Across town, Jason Morgan was dealing with his own storm. He'd always been Sonny's right-hand man, unwaveringly loyal and willing to cross lines that others wouldn't. But this time something felt off. He learned about the frame job from a PCPD contact, and the further he examined, the more anxious he became. Sonny hadn't informed him about the proposal, which was unusual. They had always relied on trust, a friendship built over years of shared risks and sacrifices. Jason's instincts told him there was more to this, and when he found out Anna Devane, the police commissioner and a lady he had grown to appreciate, was involved, his concern turned to wrath. Anna's role in the incident was unclear, but Jason had enough information to piece it together. She'd spent months investigating Grayson and building a case against the dishonest judge. She had encountered Sonny somewhere along the line, and instead of taking him down, she made a deal with him. Or so it appeared. The specifics were unclear, but Jason's source claimed Anna had informed Sonny about Grayson's vulnerabilities, giving him the opportunity to incriminate Drew. In exchange, Sonny vowed to keep important secrets about Anna's past hidden, which could harm her career and reputation in Port Charles. For Jason, this was a betrayal of all he believed Anna represented. She always seemed to obey the rules. It was difficult to understand that she had sold Drew, a man who had done nothing to earn it. Jason confronted Anna late one night in her office, which was unusually silent except from the hum of fluorescent lights. She stood straight behind her desk, her gaze dubious as he stormed in. "Tell me it's not true," he said calmly and firmly. Anna didn't flinch, but her immobility spoke volumes. She sought to explain, using deliberate and measured language. She had not planned for things to get to this point, she explained. She had only shared information with Sonny to protect someone else, whom she was concerned about. But Jason didn't buy it. "You knew what he'd do with it," he said softly, his blue eyes fixed on her. "You gave him the ammunition, and now Drew is paying the price." Anna's demeanor softened briefly, a hint of regret flickering through her eyes, but she quickly recovered her composure. "Sometimes you make choices you don't like to protect the people you love," she once said to me. Jason shook his head, and his jaw tightened. "That's not an excuse." Back at Pozzolo's, Sonny was sweating. The frame job was functional, but cracks began to develop. Drew's legal team persisted in disputing the evidence's authenticity. The offshore account was secure, but BRIBE underestimated the determination of ELQ's cybersecurity experts, who were now looking into the digital trail. Sonny was not concerned yet. He's been in tight circumstances before and always come out on top. However, Jason's absence irritated him. His friend hadn't been around much since the scandal broke, and when they did talk, Jason's questions were sharp and probing. Sonny noticed Jason's gleaming eyes. It was the expression of a man who recognized a falsehood. Meanwhile, BRIBE was untouched. He thrived in chaos, so this was only another game for him. Sitting at a corner table at Pozzolo's, he sipped a bourbon while reading through encrypted texts on his phone to keep track of the investigation. He had done an amazing job of hiding his tracks, but he was not naive. If the plan failed, he'd leave Port Charles before anyone could point fingers. Sonny, on the other hand, was too well established to run. This was his town, his territory, and he would fight to keep it. BRIBE recognized it, but he was not going down with the ship. As the days passed, the anxiety in Port Charles grew. Drew's campaign was in shambles, with his image appearing on every news channel as the poster child for corruption. The Quartermaines were circling the wagons, but they couldn't shield him from the public's rage. Monica, his mother, was outraged and pledged to find out who was behind it. She suspected Sonny, as did everyone else, but proving it was another thing. The evidence against Drew seemed to be conclusive. Monica's instincts told her there was more to this, and she was not about to let her son go down without a fight. Jason, meanwhile, was dealing with his own troubles. His love for Sonny had been the foundation of his existence for decades, But this time seemed different. Framing Drew was more than just a business. It was personal. Drew was family, although in a twisted way, and Jason couldn't shake the notion that Sonny had crossed a line. The more he thought about Anna's role, the more angry he grew. She had always presented herself as a force for good, but he now viewed her in a new light. Her betrayal went beyond Drew. It affected everything Jason believed in. Once destroyed, trust was impossible to recover. Anna, for her part, was overcome with remorse. She did not want things to turn out this way. Her agreement with Sonny was a desperate decision driven by a desire to protect someone close to her. Someone whose safety was more essential than her own principles. But the cost was higher than she had anticipated. Drew's death was on her thoughts, and Jason's fury cut deeper than she cared to admit. She had always admired Jason, even when their lives collided. His moral code, while unusual, was powerful, and she had now lost his trust. She told herself it was worthwhile, that she had finished her obligations, but late at night, when the precinct was quiet and her thoughts were racing, she was doubtful. Drew's team identified a weakness in the security footage, which served as a watershed moment. It was weak, nearly undetectable, but one of ELQ's computer experts saw a flicker in the timestamp, indicating digital interference. It wasn't much, but it was sufficient to raise concerns about the evidence. Drew's lawyer, Diane Miller, seized on the issue and filed applications to have the footage re-examined. Despite their initial doubts due to the high notoriety of the case, the officials agreed to investigate further. Sonny received aware of it through personal contacts and summoned Brick to his office. "Fix this," he said quietly and firmly. Brick nodded, but for the first time, his eyes widened with concern. He was decent but not flawless. Meanwhile, Jason was doing his own digging. He didn't believe Sonny's version of events, and he definitely didn't believe Anna. He started monitoring the money, and used his personal network of contacts to find the offshore account. It led him to a Cayman-based shell company with Sonny's fingerprints all over it. Jason did not confront Sonny yet. He wanted more evidence, something serious, to convince his friend to come clean. But as he probed more, he saw how far Sonny would go to protect his empire. And Anna? She was in deeper than he had anticipated. The city was like a powder keg, waiting for a spark. Drew's supporters rallied behind him, claiming he was the object of a smear campaign. Sonny's opponents smelled blood in the water, and saw an opportunity to undercut his control over Port Charles. Anna walked a tightrope, trying to maintain her authority as commissioner while keeping her personal life private. How about Jason? He was conflicted about loyalty and justice, the past and the truth. As the investigation into the footage developed, Brick attempted frantically to conceal his activities. He cleaned up servers, rerouted IP addresses, and introduced additional degrees of confusion. He could feel the pressure building up, though. Sonny, meanwhile, was losing his cool. He yelled at his lieutenants, questioned his actions, and drank more than usual. The empire he had built was threatened, and for the first time in years he felt vulnerable. Drew, bolstered by recent disclosures, refused to back down. He held a press conference, his voice firm, declaring his innocence and promising to fight the charges. The public, as fickle as ever, began to waver. Maybe he wasn't guilty after all. Perhaps there was more to this story. Monica observed her child with pride and worry. She was familiar with Port Charles's underbelly and knew that whoever was behind this would not give up lightly. Jason's interaction with Sonny was unavoidable. It happened late one night, after Pozzolos had closed. The two males stood across from each other, the air heavy with unspoken accusations. "Have you done it?" Jason asked, his voice calm but frigid. Sonny didn't blink. "You understand how this works, Jason?" Jason stiffened his jaw. "Not like this." The silence that followed was deafening, a chasm forming between them. Sonny tried to explain and justify, but Jason didn't listen. He went out, leaving Sonny alone in his dimly lit office. Anna too faced a reckoning. Drew's crew began questioning her about her Grayson probe, and accusations circulated about her relationship to Sonny. She knew the truth will eventually come out. She could try to run and hide, but the walls were closing in. Late one night, she sat at her desk, staring at a photograph of her daughter Robin. "I did it for you," she said, but the words seemed empty. The scandal wasn't over. The evidence was unraveling, But so were the bonds that had previously bound Port Charles together. Sonny's empire was in jeopardy, Brick was on edge, Drew was battling for his life, and Jason was caught in the crossfire, divided between the man he'd always been and the man he needed to become. Anna's betrayal had set everything in action, and now there was no turning back. Port Charles was a community based on secrets, and this one threatened to bring everything crashing down. The truth was out there, buried in encrypted files and whispered deals, but finding it would be costly. For Sonny, it might mean losing everything he has created. For Brick, this may mean a one-way trip out of town. Drew saw it as an opportunity for redemption, but only if he could make it through the storm. For Jason, it was about determining the boundary between devotion and betrayal. And for Anna, it was about accepting the implications of a decision she could never change. The coming days would be difficult, full with revelations and reckonings. The frame-up was a gamble, a power play that had gotten out of hand. As the truth began to emerge, Port Charles readied itself for what lay ahead. Nobody would survive untouched, and the city would never be the same.